This is the kind of story that'll make you rethink what loyalty really means in the streets. Because in this one, blood ties didn't mean nothing. We're talking about Hakeem Robinson, better known in the rap game as Ksoo, the Jacksonville drill rapper who built his rep off-street credibility, violent lyrics, and being deep in one of the city's deadliest beefs. But the same life that boosted his music career? It's the same one that took him down. And the twist that came at the end still got people's jaws on the floor.
Who was the person that was captured on the video recording shooting Charles McCormick?
What's
What's your son's name?
Let's run it back. In Jacksonville, Florida, the rap scene is different. It's not just music, it's real-life gang politics on beats. The ATK versus KTA beef is one of the most notorious in Florida, and Ksoo was all in. ATK, led by rapper Youngeen Ace, had been in a long, bloody feud with KTA, and bodies had already dropped on both sides. The beef wasn't just bars, it was war. That's why when Charles McCormick, known in the streets as Lil Buck, ended up dead in January 2020, cops didn't have to look far for suspects. McCormick was a known KTA affiliate, and he'd been dissing ATK members hard, especially after the killing of Willie Addison, Ace's brother, back in 2018. Addison was gunned down in a drive-by that also injured Youngeen Ace. The streets said McCormick had been laughing about it, dropping disrespectful lines in his music. That was the match that lit this fire. On January 15, 2020, McCormick was gunned down in broad daylight outside an apartment complex. Witnesses said a car rolled up, shots rang out, and the shooters sped off. At first, it looked like another hit in the never-ending Jacksonville cycle. But the difference this time? Police had more than just rumors. They pulled surveillance footage. They matched a green Nissan Altima to the scene. That car, it had been rented by none other than Ksoo's father, Abdul Robinson Sr. Inside the car, investigators found fingerprints and DNA that tied directly back to Ksoo. On top of that, cell phone tower data showed his phone moving in sync with the suspect vehicle that day. And the icing on the cake? Instagram posts where Ksoo was mocking McCormick's death not even 24 hours later. This wasn't just reckless, it was incriminating. Prosecutors had been watching Ksoo for a while, and this gave them the opening they needed. But the streets still thought maybe he'd beat it. After all, rappers have beaten murder raps before. And in Jacksonville, snitching is the ultimate sin. Then came the betrayal. When the trial kicked off, everybody expected the state to lean heavy on forensic evidence, and maybe a co-defendant's testimony. What nobody expected was Ksoo's own father taking the stand for the prosecution. Yeah, you heard that right. Abdul Robinson Sr., the man who raised him, sat there in a courtroom and told the jury his son was involved in the killing. The courtroom went silent when he pointed at Ksoo. No ducking, no avoiding the question. He said it plain. And he didn't stop there. He admitted to helping cover up the murder by moving the car and cleaning up evidence. But he claimed he was pressured by his son and others in ATK. To the state, this was golden. To the streets, it was treason. People couldn't believe it. In a world where you're taught family over everything, this was the ultimate backstab. Word spread quick in Jacksonville. The same man who put Ksoo in the game had now put him behind bars. And for a drill rapper whose whole image was built on loyalty and street honor, this was the final nail in the coffin. And this was just one murder. Ksoo still had another case pending for the killing of Adrian Lil Bibby Gaynor Jr., a 16-year-old also linked to KTA. That meant even if he somehow walked from McCormick's case, he had another murder trial waiting. But with his father's testimony in the bag, the state wasn't letting him see daylight again. If you've been following Jacksonville's rap scene, you already know this wasn't just some random street beef. The ATK versus KTA war has been one of the most dangerous rivalries in Florida, and the way it's been playing out ain't like the old school days where rappers kept it on wax. Nah, this beef had real body counts. Ksoo wasn't just another rapper in the mix. He was frontline, the kind of artist who would put his ops' faces on his album covers, diss the dead by name, and smile while doing it. In the streets, that made him respected and feared. But in the courtroom, it was a goldmine for prosecutors. Let's talk about the Willie Addison situation, because this is where the bad blood really hit a boiling point. Back in 2018, Addison, who was Youngeen Ace's brother, was shot and killed in a drive-by after a rap event. Ace himself survived, but was hit multiple times. The streets whispered that KTA affiliates, including Charles McCormick, had something to do with it, and McCormick made it worse by mocking Addison's death in music and on social media. Prosecutors said this was the motive, revenge, and to prove it, they didn't just bring witnesses. They brought Ksoo's own music videos and Instagram posts into court. Every lyric, every diss, every clip of him laughing at an op's death, they played it for the jury. One of the most damaging pieces, the Been Dead video. In it, Ksoo wore a jersey with McCormick's nickname on the back and rapped about dropping bodies. The prosecution argued that this wasn't just art, it was a confession wrapped in a beat. And it didn't stop there. They also introduced a social media post from the day after McCormick's murder, showing Ksoo holding stacks of cash with the caption, "This how you celebrate when an op gets smoked." For the jury, it painted a picture of a man who wasn't just guilty, he was proud of it. Now the defense tried to fight back. They argued that drill rap is a form of expression that rappers take on personas and exaggerate for entertainment. They even brought in an expert witness to talk about the history of violent lyrics in hip-hop. But the state had something stronger, physical evidence. Remember that green Nissan Altima? Forensic techs testified that they found Ksoo's fingerprints on the passenger door and DNA on a ski mask left inside the car. Cell tower records placed his phone along the same route as the getaway car before and after the murder. And if that wasn't enough, they had a co-defendant willing to talk. That co-defendant was Dominique Barner. He took a plea deal in exchange for testifying against Ksoo and his father. Barner told the court that Ksoo was the shooter, and he was in the car with him when they rolled up on McCormick. He even gave details about the gun, saying it was dumped afterward, and described how the crew celebrated later that night. The defense tried to discredit Barner by pointing out that he was cutting a deal to save his own skin. But combined with the father's testimony, the social media evidence, and the forensic matches, it was too much to ignore. And here's the crazy part. This wasn't even the only murder case hanging over Ksoo's head. Prosecutors reminded the jury that he was also facing charges for the 2019 murder of Adrian Lil Bibby Gaynor Jr., a 16-year-old connected to KTA. That case wasn't being tried yet, but it hung over everything like a shadow, painting Ksoo as not just a one-time killer, but a repeat player in the war. In the streets, some folks still saw him as a soldier. In that courtroom, he was looking like a career criminal. The energy shifted. People who came to the trial expecting to see Ksoo walk out a free man started realizing this wasn't going his way. And when your own blood, your father, is pointing at you in front of a jury, that's when you know the streets can't save you anymore. Everybody knew the trial was going to be intense, but nobody expected the moment that broke the room. The prosecution called their next witness, and when he walked in, jaws dropped. It wasn't some random informant. It wasn't a rival gang member. It was Abdul Robinson Sr., Ksoo's father. You could feel the air shift. Even the jurors looked uncomfortable. In street culture, it's one thing to see a friend flip on you, but your own blood? That's different. That's a wound that don't heal. Abdul sat down, raised his right hand, and swore in. Then without hesitation, he pointed directly at Ksoo and asked to identify his son. You could see Ksoo's body stiffen, his eyes fixed on his father, like he was trying to figure out if this was real. But it was real, painfully real. The prosecutor started slow, asking him about the Nissan Altima, the same green car tied to the murder. Abdul admitted it was his rental. Then they asked if he knew what it was used for. And right there, in front of the jury, he said it was used in the shooting of Charles McCormick, and his son was in it. You could have heard a pin drop. Abdul went further, admitting he helped move and clean the car afterward. He said he was pressured into it by his son and others in ATK, painting himself as a man caught in the middle. But the damage was done. The jury just heard a father directly link his son to a murder. In the courtroom, some people shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered under their breath. Outside, the news spread through Jacksonville like wildfire. The streets were in shock. People who grew up with Ksoo couldn't wrap their heads around it. This was supposed to be a family that rode together no matter what. But now the man who put him in the game, who taught him the rules of the street, was breaking the biggest one. Don't snitch. For some, Abdul's decision was simple. He was saving himself. If he didn't cooperate, he could face his own life sentence for aiding and abetting. For others, it was deeper, a betrayal of the worst kind. Social media lit up. Memes started flying, some mocking Abdul as Father of the Year in the worst way possible. Others showing Ksoo's mugshot next to his dad's like a twisted family photo. Jacksonville blogs ran headlines like, KSO's own father testifies against him, blood don't mean loyalty. The prosecution knew they'd just delivered the knockout punch. Up until then, the defense had been clinging to the idea that the evidence was circumstantial, that the co-defendant was lying for a deal. But when your own father confirms the state's story, that's game over. Ksoo's defense team tried to spin it, painting Abdul as a desperate man who would say anything to reduce his own charges. They pushed the idea that his testimony was coerced. But prosecutors had receipts, rental agreements, phone records, surveillance footage, all lining up with what Abdul said. It wasn't just words, it was backed by evidence. For Ksoo, that was the moment the fight was lost. The rest of the trial was just formality. When the verdict came in, guilty, there was no celebration in the courtroom, no outburst, just silence. The judge handed him a mandatory life sentence with no chance of parole. And even though Ksoo still had another pending murder case for Lil Bibby's death, the reality hit. He wasn't getting out. In the streets, some called it justice. Others called it tragedy. But everyone agreed on one thing. This was the end of Ksoo's run. Not because the ops took him out, not because he got caught lacking, but because his own father handed him over. And that's a story Jacksonville won't forget. By the time that guilty verdict hit, Ksoo's story was already wild enough. But the truth is, he still wasn't done facing the system. Even with a life sentence locked in for Charles McCormick's murder, prosecutors had another card to play: the killing of Adrian Lil Bibby Gaynor Jr. Lil Bibby was just 16 when he was gunned down in February 2019, and police said it was another chapter in the ATK versus KTA war. This wasn't random. Bibby was tied to KTA, and investigators believed his murder was part of the same cycle of retaliation that took McCormick's life. In fact, prosecutors hinted that if this McCormick trial didn't stick, they would have gone straight to Bibby's case, because they claimed they had even more evidence there. For Jacksonville's drill scene, these murders weren't just stories in the news, they were in the music. Diss tracks, taunts, Instagram lives. Everybody in that beef was talking about their side's wins and losses like it was sports. The problem? Those bars became evidence. Ksoo's own lyrics, videos, and captions played a major role in both cases. What used to be seen as clever disrespect in drill rap was now being read aloud in courtrooms, with juries watching clips like they were crime scene photos. Every time Ksoo bragged about smoking an op or hinted at a date tied to a murder, the state took notes. When the news broke that his father testified, the rap world reacted in two ways. Some rappers, especially in Jacksonville, went dead silent, not wanting their names tied to Ksoo's mess. Others used it as a teachable moment, posting things like, "This is why you can't mix real life with this rap's asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The streets don't love you, not even your family sometimes." It was clear. The same drill culture that gave Ksoo a platform was the same one that buried him. And that's the part a lot of young artists still don't get. The streets can make you famous fast, but the fame don't protect you when the DA got your music videos in evidence folders. Ksoo went from racking up millions of views to being an example the state will use against every rapper in Jacksonville from here on out. Behind bars, his name still rings out. Some see him as a soldier who stood on business until the end. Others see him as reckless, a man who handed the state everything it needed by putting real crimes in songs. Either way, his career's over and his freedom's gone. The craziest part? This story ain't even over. With the Lil Bibby case still pending, the possibility exists that he could face another life sentence stacked on top of the one he's already serving. Even if it doesn't change his time, it cements the state's message. If you mix real beef with your rap career, they're coming for you. And what about his father, Abdul Robinson Sr.? In the streets, his name is done. The testimony made him a pariah in certain circles. But from a legal standpoint, he probably saved himself from dying in prison. That decision will forever be one of the most controversial moments in Jacksonville's street history. For Jacksonville rap, This was the ultimate cautionary tale. You can't be fully in the streets and fully in the industry at the same time. Eventually, one will kill the other. And when your own family can be turned into state witnesses, you realize loyalty in the game ain't guaranteed. Ksoo's story will be told in two ways. In the streets, as a tale of betrayal. In the courts, as a blueprint for how prosecutors can dismantle a drill rapper's career. Either way, his run is over. And the rap game just got another reminder that this life comes with a price tag.